Becoming wealthy is very different to what most people anticipate how it will be. Most people work very hard, save for many, many years, try to reach that 1 million milestone, maybe 2 million milestone. And many people expect that life will be fundamentally different at that point. Now, I'm there. I'm at a net worth at roughly $2 million. And I can tell you, while life definitely is better with money than without money, it's not fundamentally different. And it's not different in the way how you might anticipate. You might think, and I wasn't very different in that belief, that once you've got money, you don't necessarily have to go to the office anymore. You don't have to report to that boss anymore. You can travel wherever you want. You will have more time for the family. You will have more time for that hobby or for that sport that you always wanted to do. You are free. You are financially free, right? The people that are extremely frugal, they just want to quit their job. They want to retire early, right? The FIRE movement, financially independent, retire early. That's the dream. And maybe that's not the reason why you want to have the money, right? Maybe you want to have the money in order to gain status. Maybe buy a nice watch, buy a nice car. Things will be fundamentally different. People will look at you differently once you drive that Lamborghini, for example. Now, usually I don't show this on this channel because I don't want to brag with status symbols on here, right? This is a data-driven channel. But I just want to share this because it fits in this video and the topic of this video. They have already experienced those things, right? I do enjoy driving fast cars. And while this can make an impression on some people, it doesn't necessarily fundamentally change your life. Because here's the truth. Whatever kind of problem you try to solve, so be this confidence to have some status symbols, be it freedom to not having to go to the office, etc. Many of those things can be solved without putting a lot of money on that problem. Money is the easy solution to many problems, but usually it's not the only solution. There are many ways to solve the time issue, for example, right? Let's say you want to spend more time with your family. You don't always want to be in the office. You don't always want to be on business trips, etc. You want to have more time with your kids. You want to have more time with your wife, etc. Maybe you just want to have more time with your friends. There is an easier solution than trying to reach 1 or 2 million in net worth and retire early. And that's simply to find a job that compensates adequately, that allows you to every now and then work from home, right? It's more common today than it has ever been, but I've actually done this already before I made some money. If you want to follow that hobby, right? If you want to do some sport, very often you can also do this just during the lunch break, right? So instead of just sitting somewhere watching brain rot content, or instead of talking to the colleagues you might not even enjoy that much, right? Maybe you don't really enjoy that company. Maybe it's better to just do whatever you enjoy doing if you were not working. Very often the best jobs also are somewhat flexible on how long of a lunch break you take. You might not need to take 3 or 4 hours, but maybe every now and then you take 2 hours and then you do that tennis match or that paddle match or that pickleball match, whatever it be. If you're traveling, you don't necessarily have to travel far away all the time, right? You can just travel the countries next to you and you don't have to fly business class. Maybe you can even drive there. Maybe it's really just convenience. Right? You could drive to interesting destinations around you, or you could take the train. It would be way cheaper than trying to fly anywhere, to fly to the Maldives. And while flying to the Maldives might be nice, say for the honeymoon, it also becomes boring after a while. And experiencing it at some point in life might make sense, but it doesn't have to be when you're 25. Confidence also doesn't necessarily have to come from materialistic status symbols, right? It can also just come from competence. So let's say you're the best at something. You're the best musician that doesn't get paid much. You're the best artist for this very niche thing that might also not pay much, but you're the best at something and you get admiration from that community for that particular thing. You don't necessarily need admiration from any random stranger. They don't know you anyways. They don't care about you anyways. If you're good at something, that's already good enough to feel confident, to have status. You don't necessarily need to purchase status symbols. So really, I think there's only 3 kinds of people with money. They're the people that spend pretty much everything that they make, potentially even more than that, rack up credit card debt. They don't really get anywhere in terms of building net worth. Then there are the savers, right? They tend to save maybe 10, 20% of their income, just to have something on the side, to have an emergency fund, to potentially also acquire some wealth for retirement. And then there are the people that try to out-earn their spending so much that they build up a net worth very quickly relative to their expenses that they can then retire early, right? Those are the frugal people or the people that work incredibly hard, so that the ratio between income and expenses is very much in favor of income. Now, I'm not really sure if any of those approaches is fundamentally the best for everyone, because not necessarily everybody wants to retire early, right? Why would you be super frugal, save 60, 70% of your income if you actually love your job, if you actually think your job is pretty safe, if you actually see personal development within that job? Why would you even work so hard and not spend your money to a degree? Of course, if you spend more than you make, that's a problem because it creates a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety. But really, that's the main thing that money does. Money doesn't necessarily change your life fundamentally because it can solve the problems in other ways. Money is mainly a trigger to reduce your stress levels, to reduce anxiety. Money is the quick and easy solution, but it's not necessarily the best solution. It's not necessarily the only solution for the vast majority of problems. Let's say here, right? I currently live in Malaysia. Malaysia, there are many ways to get a visa. You could get a visa by getting employed here. You could get a visa by creating a business here, but you can also get a visa just by investment, right? If you've got money, you get the MM2H, you do a bit of a deposit, you buy property, suddenly you can live here. So those kind of problems are easily solvable with money, but they could also be solved simply if you were to work here, if you were to build a business here. Some people think that they will get a better partner when they've got a nice career that earns much, but will that really be true, right? Because what's that based on, that kind of relationship? Yes, the relationship problem might be solved somehow, but is it solved in the best way possible? So really, fundamentally, for most of the problems you have, you can solve them with money, but very likely you can also solve them without much money. You don't necessarily need the millions of dollars. Money doesn't make you happy. Money simply just reduces stress. It reduces anxiety. And maybe that's the reason why rich people, why the billionaires of this world, they all live into their 90s, or let's say most of them. They all become very old because they simply are less stressed. They can sleep longer. They don't have to wake up at 5 a.m. every day in order to drive to work and be stuck in traffic. But you could solve this problem even without having all of that money. Instead, of course, there are other problems that might pop up, right? If you are just regularly employed in a job and you're hustling your way through life, you've got a lot of pressure, a lot of external pressure. And that pressure, of course, has its bad side. That's why we all want to retire. But the pressure also has some kind of positive side, because if there's no pressure, there's potentially also no challenge, and there's potentially also no progress. Many people, for example, they become fat once they get married. Once there's no pressure anymore to perform in the dating market, they simply just let everything go, right? They don't go to the gym anymore. Instead, they drink beer and eat potato chips in the evening and just rather regress than become better over time. So what I notice with many areas in life, there's usually activity that brings you long-term forward, and there's another activity that brings you long-term backward. Very few activities are completely neutral. And when there's no pressure, when things that usually progress you suddenly get replaced with things that do not progress you, suddenly things turn sour very quickly. So let's say you're in a job and you have to learn this programming language. You have to learn this technical skill. You have to become better at something. You have to manage your stress properly just in order to hit that deadline. There's real progress here. But let's say you wouldn't have to do this. And instead, you decide to go to the bar every evening. And while this sounds nice for 1 or 2 evenings, if you had to go to the bar every single evening, you are an alcoholic at one point. You'll become fat. You become unhealthy. You will become sick. In other words, once there's not anymore the external pressure that much, we have to set ourselves internal pressure. Suddenly, there's even discipline required in being retired. Right? Many people that retire also age very fast. What also many people do not realize how strong of a link there is between net worth and financial security and age. As in, the median millionaire in the US is in their 60s, and most people become a millionaire in their 50s. So if you've got the target of being completely free of work, of going to the office, say in your 30s, and then you spend your time with other people that also have that freedom, chances are most other people that you will meet, say in the mornings when everybody else goes to office, will be in the 50s and in the 60s. If you decide to play tennis and do your sport, that will very likely, when it's in the morning hours, be with older people than you. So the people that you work out with, the people that you maybe have breakfast afterwards, they could potentially be your father or your mother, right? They will be from a different generation on average. Only a small minority is able to gain millionaire status already in the 20s or 30s. In other words, if you want to meet people of the younger generation, you will still be stuck in traffic because you have to plan according to their schedule. They have to follow office hours. If you want to meet them, you have to meet them outside of office hours. You will be in the exact same traffic jam as they are. Maybe not every day, but after work potentially, if you then play tennis, you will be also in rush hour traffic at 6 or 7 p.m. And regarding the travel plans, right, regarding the freedom of visiting other countries, you will still be bound by the holiday schedule. Right? If you don't decide to have your kids homeschooled, you want to let them grow regularly like other people, socialize a little bit with normal people, then you have to follow the regular holiday schedule. Thus, you still have to pay the peak season prices for hotels. You still fight for the plane tickets at elevated prices. So you're still not out of this. You still have to live your life according to how society in general is set up. So don't understand me wrong. Having money is definitely better than not having money. And there are easy solutions, very often good solutions, that can be achieved just throwing money at the problem instead of working through the problem. But money doesn't necessarily solve all of your problems, and the problems that it does solve can very easily be solved in another way as well. Money really reduces stress, and this has a good and a bad side, right? The bad side is that we have to find challenges actively ourselves. Being wealthy, it does have a positive impact on life. It is better to have money than not to have money. But the impact is not the way most people anticipate. There's really not that much additional freedom that we couldn't achieve just by switching jobs, just by arranging something with an employer. So is it worth pursuing building net worth over time, becoming richer over time? I think definitely it's worth it, but it's not worth every price. It's not worth your health, for example. It's not worth working 100 hours or even more than that per week, only sleeping 4 or 5 hours, being in the office till late midnight to do this M&A deal or to do this consultancy thing. It's not really worth that because health is really above everything. If you get a health problem, you're more than willing to spend all of your money on solving that health problem. So really, sleep is above wealth. Or some people say that health is wealth. It's also not worth sacrificing the connection with very important people in your life, right? If you have to stay in the office late and then you don't have time for your wife or for your kids, then really, what is that all for? It's better to find a way to not have to work that much and maybe take a small pay cut along the way, but there will be opportunities at some point to make more money anyways, right? There are some things that never come back, and that's the time with your children. At some point, they grow up. And if you've been in the office all the time preparing PowerPoints and you didn't have time to play with your kids, you didn't have time to bond, then that's not good. Really, what you want to sacrifice is all the activities that you do not enjoy, that just waste your time, that don't bring you forward. It's like brain rot content on TikTok, it's YouTube shorts, it's spending time with colleagues that you don't really enjoy spending time with. Then just change jobs. I know I said it several times in this video, but it's really as simple as that. And I think it's the best just to consider, what do you really want to do day in and day out? For the things that don't have much value, not just monetary value, but just value in terms of enjoyment, try to just minimize them and try to find ways to minimize them without necessarily spending that much money. If you found this video interesting, feel free to give it a like. It will help the channel grow. Feel free to also subscribe. I publish this regularly. Feel free to also join the premium membership if you want to see how I currently build my wealth, how my portfolio is set up, and where I also share my trades. The link to premium pops up here on the screen. See you next time. Cheers.